Good morning, and thank you for attending our virtual Executive Leadership Breakfast. As many of you know, the pandemic forced us to move our date twice and eventually turn it into this online event. Thank you for your patience and welcome. Peirce College is grateful for the generous support of our sponsors who have made this year's Executive Leadership Breakfast a success.
Our collaborating sponsors include NJM Insurance Group and PICO. Our contributing sponsors include the Urban Affairs Coalition, Bancroft, Bradley & Bradley Associates, DCW Media, Duane Morris, the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia, Wells Fargo, and Study.com. Our patron sponsors include Jevs, Grant Thornton, the Chamber of Commerce of Greater Philadelphia, the Mainline Chamber of Commerce, Arthur J. Gallagher and Company, Graduate Philadelphia, Allied Universal, Burns Mechanical, our former board chair, Barbara Pretzman, Peirce trustee and graduate, William Morgan, and our former president and CEO, James Murgiati. And our small business sponsors include Cameron & Associates 8, Goldman Sachs, Schnoll Painting, and Philiport, the Port of Philadelphia.
I would also like to extend our thanks to the honorary chairs of this year's event. Charmaine Matlock Turner, President and CEO of the Urban Affairs Coalition and a Peirce trustee. Stephen Scott Bradley, Chair of the African American Chamber of Commerce of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, President and founder of Bradley & Bradley Associates and a Peirce trustee. And Patrick Clancy, President and CEO of PhillyWorks. We are grateful for the guidance and support you have each provided over the past several months. Now, I am honored to introduce you to our host, Hassan Charles, Vice President of Workforce Innovation and Partnerships at Peirce College, who will share news about Peirce's newest initiative before going over today's agenda. Hassan, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Carroll. And hello to everyone joining us today. Our region has been working hard to find solutions that help Philadelphia's economy recover from the devastating effects of COVID-19. That includes many of you with us here today. I want to thank you for your unrelenting spirit and persistence. It's never been more important. Peirce also recently launched an innovative program designed to move displaced workers and those in underserved communities from low-wage jobs to in-demand careers that pay family-sustaining wages. We call it Career Bridge. Our program prepares students with the skills, certifications, and credentials needed for better-paying jobs and guides them to those jobs in a matter of months. I want you to picture shorter, affordable learning programs with industry-recognized embedded certifications that prove you have the skills and credentials employers most want. We begin by helping you assess your current experience and skills against those required for real, in-demand jobs, and often you'll qualify to receive college credits for your work. Anyone can learn more about Career Bridge by logging on to the Peirce website at peirce.edu. Now let's take a look at our agenda. It begins with our first Trailblazers in Transformation Awards, which recognize two extraordinary members of the Peirce alumni community, Diana Kirkland and Josh Slocum. Following the awards, we will move to our panel discussion, which focuses on the nexus of higher education and workforce training as part of Philadelphia's recovery and our collective efforts to develop equitable solutions. And following the discussion, the panel will be available to answer your questions. We plan to wrap today's event at 10 a.m. Up first, we are honored to introduce you to Diana Kirkland and Josh Slocum, the very first recipients of Peirce College's Trailblazers in Transformation Award. This award recognizes students and alumni who embody the college's spirit of innovation through their academic, professional, and personal achievements. Diana and Josh are excellent examples of how we can transform our lives and prove what's possible.
Diana Kirkland embodies the characteristics of a true trailblazer. As a U.S. Navy veteran, she completed her associate's and baccalaureate degrees despite overwhelming odds and personal challenges. Today, Diana continues her commitment to our country, supporting fellow veterans and navigating their benefits.
I would define transformation as being in one situation, which is kind of a rock bottom situation, and then growing from that situation into becoming a success story. I believe Peirce had a lot to do with my transformation. So I actually started my journey to recovery back in November of 2010, and I started at Veterans Upward Bound in 2011. Peirce gave me confidence to know that I could go further, to just remain clean and sober, because they gave me the motivation to want to just learn. They believed in me, and by them believing in me, it gave me more confidence to believe in myself that I could go forward and still be successful. Peirce is one of the biggest reasons why I am where I am today. I'm a college graduate. I think I started college at age 50. Sometimes I have to pinch myself because I still can't believe it. Peirce has been a tremendous reason why my life is still the way it is right now. I'm 10 years almost clean and sober, and Peirce has a very big part in that role. So I'm proud of Peirce. I love Peirce.
Josh Slocum is a trailblazer on the go, and I believe he'll be a trailblazer for many years to come. We're proud to help Josh keep his promise to his parents to complete his degree. Josh is currently serving customers as a cloud desk agent for Comcast, one of our corporate partners.
Transformation for me is just evolving. A lot of times, we as people embrace failure. So with that, that kind of brings growth. Peirce made a huge impact. It all started at Peirce, because at my school before I didn't get a chance to finish due to my financial situation. The promise that I made to my parents is that I was going to continue school. I wanted to make them proud. They worked so hard. It was a lot of sacrifice with that. I wanted to be an example, especially to my family and to my friends. Peirce has motivated me. I've met so many great people, so many great teachers. The Career Center has helped me out a lot. They've helped me with LinkedIn. They fixed my resume. The way I found out about Comcast was through the Career Development Center. I built great relationships. The leadership at Comcast is awesome. My manager cheers me on every day. Some of my goals is to definitely get promoted to the next level at my job, joining leadership. Also, working on my creative side. What I've been working on is my bowling brand. I wanted to do something to change the industry of bowling. And as Kobe Bryant said, you want to basically leave an impact on the world, and that's what I want to do.
Congratulations to Diana and Josh, and thank you for sharing your stories with us. Up next is our panel discussion. We will focus on how higher education and workforce training can develop solutions to help displaced workers in Philadelphia get back to work in jobs that pay family-sustaining wages. You are invited to submit questions for the panel during the discussion. Today's discussion will be moderated by Sheila Ireland, Deputy Secretary of Workforce Development at the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry. Sheila is also a Peirce trustee. Today's panelists include Jeff Hornstein, Executive Director of the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia. Tammy Pollard, Director of Corporate Learning and Organizational Development at AmeriHealth Caritas.
Bob Smith, Vice President of Community Impact at Comcast.
And Lisa Gauthier, Council Member and former Mayor of East Palo Alto, California. On behalf of Peirce College, thank you to Sheila and our panelists for participating in this year's Executive Leadership Breakfast. We are grateful that you are able to share your perspectives and your expertise with us today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sheila Ireland to begin our panel discussion.
Good morning, everyone. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Sheila.
Good to see you. So I usually just start and launch right in, but I gotta say, congrats to Diana and to Josh. What a touching tribute to the two of you, and your success is just the thing that I think that keeps most of us that are on the panel today inspired. right? It really is the reason why we do the work that we do. I know it's why I lean in and why it's so important to have this conversation today. So just congratulations very much. And unfortunately, Hassan, started the day all teared up. So I got to get it together now, right? So as Hassan said, I serve as the Deputy Secretary of Workforce Development for LNI for the Commonwealth. And so clearly our topic this morning is core to our concerns, both as a Commonwealth and for me in particular as a Philadelphian. So how do we deal specifically with the impact of COVID-19 and the impact it's had on the labor market? What do we need to be paying attention to? And then how do we build back stronger? That's what we want to talk about today. And because you're here today, I know you understand that education, or today I should say it means lifelong learning, helps open the doors to opportunity and helps people transform their lives. Yet as we near the end of this pandemic, we know that the world of higher education and workforce development has undergone what we would consider to be some seismic shifts. Questions concerning accessibility, affordability, diversity, equity, inclusion, and the arrival of the future work have become important parts of the conversation about what should we do next. So in order to answer some of these questions, Peirce has put together this amazing panel of leaders to help us navigate these issues of how to best leverage higher education and market-driven training and development to better prepare Philadelphians for work and basically to accelerate economic mobility in our city. So welcome, panelists. So I'm gonna start off with a softball. So little did we know about a year ago, almost, right? Year, couple weeks, global pandemic, record unemployment. For the second month in a row in Pennsylvania, we're stuck at 7.3%. But I will say this, it has allowed us to shine what I think is a critical lens on some problems that we have not really delved into the way we have in the last year. And that's the depression of specific industries and populations. And frankly, its correlation to education and the fragility of employment, particularly for those at the bottom. And if you want to drill down even further, to diversity, equity, inclusion is a core issue. So I think we need to start by getting a better handle on defining the program. So Jeff, you know the role of the Economy League in Philadelphia, right? You are thought leadership. You are the think tank we turn to when we're trying to unravel problems. Like I said, unemployment for the second month in a row in Pennsylvania is stuck at 7.3%. You know, consistently we've been above, I wish, the national average. Yet employers are telling us all the time that they can't find the workers they need. So Jeff, is it a skills shortage or is it an opportunity gap?
So thanks, Sheila. For those of you who don't know, the Economy League is 112 years old this year. We think of ourselves as a think and do tank. And so some of the thought leadership we've tried to exercise with Sheila as an amazing partner in many of her roles as a workforce expert in this ecosystem. You know, we did the analytics behind the Fueling Philadelphia's Talent Engine report, and we've continued to do some follow-up work on that. And for sure, we have some skills gaps in this in Philadelphia, but more importantly, I think are structural gaps in the market. I mean, our jobs are growing at the low and high ends. And I think one of the things that excites me about Career Bridge, from what I understand about it, is really looking at shifting from a simple focus on credentials to competencies, right? We really need to focus on what do adults need to get back in the employment pipeline. When we were working on the Lenfest North Philly Workforce Initiative strategic plan, our analysis shows that there's so much opportunity at the low end. And I'll just put my cards on the table. For those of you who don't know, I was a union organizer for 10 years. I hope that doesn't get me excommunicated. But we know that even so-called low-skilled jobs or foundational skill jobs can become good jobs when workers are organized. So I see a tremendous role actually for the service sector unions to play a role at getting folks into decent paying jobs, even at the low skill level, and then providing opportunities through training and upgrading. My hero, Cheryl Feldman at 1199C, has shown what's possible in that regard. But it's the employer partnerships, community engagement, career advancement, having pipelines. So I would say that we have both a skills and an opportunity gap, but the opportunity gap to me is more related to structural problems in our economy, which many people have been focusing on. How do we ramp up the production of middle skill jobs in our economy and create that career pipeline?
Mm-hmm. Powerful, Jeff. It's very helpful. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. But I would ask Tammy from the AmeriHealth Caritas kind of viewpoint, not exactly the same question, Tammy, but we had a very powerful conversation on the work you do around trauma informed and how you use it specifically in your talent development strategies at AmeriHealth. Can you share those with our audience?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that organizations need to consider is that as they begin to look at the skills that are needed to move forward, they look at how they're going to reskill and upskill their workforce. They have to also consider what is the impacts of trauma. We know about 1/3 of all adults have some level of adverse childhood experiences that impact how their behaviors show out, if you will, in the workplace. And it's important for organizations to begin to understand that. In 2020, the world really hit a trauma impact that we've all experienced. We don't know what that looks like today, but we do know it's going to impact tomorrow in the workplace. So how do we then bring that understanding into the programs that we develop as an organization? How do we change our HR policies to understand that, people come into the workplace with trauma and adjust that? The purpose of learning and education is to make sure that people are open to it. And so we have to make sure programs don't shut people down, that they allow them to be themselves, bring their whole being to work and be able to achieve. I think one of the most important things that you talked about is that that trauma is hitting us all, but our most vulnerable populations are experiencing it more than anyone else. They are coming with more than 1 or 2 childhood experiences on top of COVID. And so the programs that we are starting to look at is considering how does that impact people when we see that reaction, when we see people don't want to take on activities, they're risk aversion, right? When you see individuals who are procrastinating at doing things, what does it really mean? And what do those skills, how do we adjust in our organizations to include that so that we can help people through it and move forward? And so those are the things that we are considering as we design.
Tammy, that's amazing. And, so part of the issue, and I don't want to sidetrack the conversation, but, every time I have a conversation with you, I learn something new, right? So one of the issues I think that we are trying to understand specifically is that, across the board, higher education enrollment is down, right? Enrollment in workforce development training is down. Some of that has been as the shift, to virtual platforms have been kind of hit or miss across the board. Like people are struggling with specifically how to do it. But I would say this, I would be curious as to your opinion, because what I would hope is that people would be taking advantage of the stimulus and advantage of the opportunities, advantage of the downtime in some way, right? To be able to reskill, upskill, so that when we do come into recovery, which we know will be this fall, they're ready, right? How do we encourage people to do that who are facing trauma?
Well, there's several ways to do it because there's both the formal and the informal learning that we experience. The formal learning being those training classes and those educations that we go through. We need to make sure that they're accessible to individuals. We need to make sure that they're affordable to them. And we need to make sure that they have the ability to take on that learning, meaning they have the technical connections in this virtual world that we live in, that they have the computers that they need in order to join those different programs. But on top of that, there is also a shared responsibility amongst all of us to do that informal learning, to lean in, as I often say, to someone who just needs us to share our experiences and our learning. And when we combine those two things, I think we can help move the needle with everyone. But we do need both of those things to be working at the same time.
Thank you. I think that's amazing. And so, Bob, amazing work you're doing at Comcast Community Impact. I've been a big fan for years, right? So tell me.
Feeling is mutual.
Thank you, Bob. So tell me, how do we engage our community, right? How do we engage our CBOs in this sort of understanding of the new world of lifelong learning?
Well, Tammy makes a number of really important points. And even before the pandemic, we faced in Philadelphia and across the country a digital divide, putting individuals who don't have access to the internet or to the devices that they need to connect at a significant disadvantage when it comes to educational attainment, workforce development, finding a job, and all of the other important steps that we're talking about here. So, 10 years ago, we created Internet Essentials as our primary vehicle to address the digital divide, offering low-cost internet and the opportunity to purchase a subsidized computer, and then to provide a range of digital literacy training and inclusion programs, most of which are done in cooperation with community partners. Many of those partners also engaged in workforce development. Our first partner and one of our longest standing relationships in that regard in Philadelphia is with Opportunities Industrialization Center. So Philadelphia OIC has always included digital literacy as a module in their workforce development programs, because if you get an entry-level job through those programs but don't develop additional skills, that could be a dead-end job. And they and all of the workforce development organizations want that to be the start of a career path. So we work with a wide range of organizations across the city and across the country to make sure that digital literacy is an important part of workforce development. And the pandemic, you said it in your opening remarks, has shined a light on a number of issues. And I'm so proud that it caused us to think outside of the box. And we have made dramatic changes in some of our programs, like Internet Essentials, opening up lift zones, which are places where kids who don't have access to the internet at home, or who do, but they can't stay home to learn because their parents have to go to work, can go and log on to school in a safe place. We now have 100 of those lift zones in the region, most of them in the city. And we've started a number of partnerships with organizations providing educational resources like Perscolis and Coded by Kids and Chegs and many more. We just announced a 10-year commitment to continue Internet Essentials and a $1 billion commitment behind that. And I could go on, but I won't. I do want to take a point of personal pride and say that Josh is just a great example of how Peirce and partnerships between higher education and the private sector can produce tangible, real results. I congratulate Diana and Josh, and I'm so proud that Josh is with us at Comcast.
Yeah, congratulations on getting Josh from it. All right.
And we're the winners, right?
Yes, exactly. So Lisa, I know this strikes a chord with you in a lot of ways. I was glad our cameras were off when Diana and Josh were talking, because I know you're probably tearing up over there, right? Can you share your story so that people understand how being part of a quality program helped you, frankly, get to where you've been, council member, former mayor? Share your story with us.
Sure. So good morning, and thank you for having me. It's quite early in California, but glad to be here. I'm a single mother of 3 young adults. So when it came to my education and education for my family, I knew I needed to invest in my children. So 2 of my daughters decided to go to school. So I took my education dollars and made sure that they had the best opportunity. One graduated from Arizona State. My youngest got her bachelor's degree from Spelman College and earned her master's from USC, which made it very difficult and almost impossible for me to find time for me to go back to school. But through the program, through study.com, the Working Scholars Program, it made it possible for working adults to work and remove barriers to education, which made it possible for me to go to school. So having programs that put technology in school in your pocket on a mobile phone is so important and critical, and removes a lot of the barriers. Many of us many times through the program was able to study while going back and forth to school, to work, or to even a council meeting. There are times, and having a program that would allow me to study when I had time to do it versus putting me into a time block. So it would be after a council meeting and I would be all charged up and I could still sit up and study. So I am proud to say that through the study.com program, I was able to earn my degree while being the mayor of East Palo Alto and the government affairs manager at an education tech company. So it was with pride that I was able to walk across the stage and earn my bachelor's degree in business administration. But again, when you think about the digital literacy and the things that are the barriers to education, we have to be mindful that most adults don't have time to quit work and go to school. We're making those programs and opportunities available and something that will fit into their schedule.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your story with us, Lisa. It's a powerful reminder of the impact of education on all of our lives. But as we have this conversation and we kind of move forward into, I guess we need to move forward into solutions, in some ways. And so I know you're in California, but you're dealing with some similar problems, I guess, more maybe opportunities in California in tech. But how do you think we should be helping Philadelphians get back to work and in family sustaining wages? And I'd love to understand, I think you've been clear from the student perspective that flexibility and relevance was important to you, but also as a policymaker, what do you think we should be doing?
Yeah, it's important to, I'm going to talk about diversity and inclusion programs that we've all set up. It's so important when we have diversity inclusion programs that we're really honest about those programs. Let's not just check a box and say that we've hired somebody, but how do you make sure that it's diversity, inclusion, and belonging? How do you make people feel like they belong to the organization, that they are included in the conversation, and that they're making a great contribution? Diversity and inclusion programs without mentorships is just creating a revolving door where individuals are going back outside of the door. It's important, Sheila, to have programs that are stackable. Let's allow people to earn certificates while working and then go into their bachelor's degree, and let's not just have programs that discourage earning degrees. I think we need to continue to have people earn degrees. And then on the other policy side, how do we support, from the government side, how do we support organizations who are being true and create opportunities to support the educational opportunities, putting funds behind those educational opportunities? That's going to be really critical and important for all of these programs.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And I love your use of the word belonging, right? Because I think sometimes we get all caught up in diversity, equity, inclusion, but at its core, we're human beings, and that's essentially what we're looking for is belonging. So thank you for sharing that. Jeff, what's your thoughts? How do you think we should be? What do you think we should be doing to put Philadelphia back to work, get us to family sustaining wages?
Look, I think there's a lot of work to be done here. I think, again, I don't want to beat this dead horse over and over again. I think there's been not sufficient integration of what we're doing. And this is, I'm going to throw a question back at you, Sheila, which you may or may not want to answer. But, without the Office of Workforce Development, how are we going to integrate all the great work that's going on here? We face this in the nonprofit sector a lot, where lots of organizations have great ideas. They're all Philadelphia is not a very good funding environment, especially from philanthropy in a lot of ways, especially with LendFest winding down. Where are we going to get synergy and better bang for our buck? But to stay more concrete, one thing that we've talked about before is identifying skills that are garnered even in sort of quote unquote foundational jobs that are transferable, right? Someone can have an entry level job and they become familiar with computers just by being virtue of a customer service job that they happen to get as an entry level job. That could be a credential that could be, that's a skill that you've garnered that is not traditionally looked at as a skill necessarily, but being able to deal customer facing. Those are things that employers need. So figuring out a way to incorporate that into someone's resume, maybe have a micro credential that acknowledges that you've earned the skill as a way to move up the career ladder. I wanted to echo what Lisa just said, and I'm wondering if you're related to my good friend Jamie Gauthier, our great councilwoman from the 3rd District. Anyway, so belonging is key, and I'm going to take belonging in a different direction. We have tens of thousands of adults who've been disenfranchised from the labor market in Philadelphia. How do we get them to feel like they belong in the labor market? To me, that is one of our biggest problems in Philadelphia. So many people who feel like they have been crushed and kept out of the labor market. And, again, I see a huge role for the service sector labor movement to play because they touch all of those communities, right? I worked for SEIU for almost 10 years. Our members, I used to call them life preservers because they were Black and brown women in their 50s and 60s getting $17, $18, $19 an hour with full benefits to clean office buildings. They were often the only people in their community with a job at that income level. So they were like life preservers holding up the whole neighborhood often. But how do we make sure that every new job that opens up becomes a quality job? I don't want to hear the excuse anymore. Oh, minimum wage is $7.25. This is what the market demands. There's no such thing as a market, right? Wages are purely a function of a worker's ability to bargain for herself. So we really need to support service sector union organizing and build the pipelines like the ones that Cheryl Feldman has built through 1199C to get people up the career ladder, but into decent, stable, decent paying jobs at the beginning. We shouldn't be saying, we as a society should never be saying that minimum wage job is a starter job. It is not a starter job. It is an impoverishment strategy.
Jeff, it was like, we don't want to turn this into the Jeff and Sheila show because Tammy and Lisa haven't seen it before Bob has, like that kind of thing. But I mean, your point about structure and synergy, right, has been something we've been struggling with forever. And I think workforce development in particular, beginning the Workforce Professionals Alliance, I think was the first attempt to really kind of organize in some way. But you're right, there does need to be better structure and more synergy between it. Frankly, the conversation today around how do we build back is about synergy, right? I think for the first time, you're watching higher education be collaborative and start thinking as we do in any crisis, we come up with new ideas in a crisis, right? The new idea that was always there, but now it's a good idea, right? That kind of thing.
The
But I
profound
think
glimpse
there's,
into the obvious becomes even more obvious to everyone.
yeah, there we go. There we go. And I think there's more opportunities. I know I can tell you from the Commonwealth seat, it's the same issue. We are looking at structure and we are looking across the board around how we are leveraging our resources very specifically to impact communities in different ways than we've done in the past. But
Sheila,
there's a lot of work to be done. Go ahead, Lisa.
can I add something? Because I left something out on the policy side.
Sure.
So here in East Palo Alto, we have put a tax on the business district that allows us to open up a career center. And then we know that there are people within East Palo Alto right now that are not competing for the jobs that's in Silicon Valley. So how do we train them for the jobs of the future? We are creating those training programs within. And then to build and to support that, we have a first source hiring ordinance, which requires companies that come into this community to hire at least 20% of their workforce from within our community. And we're going to do the job to make sure that they're trained and ready to go into the organization. Forgive me for leaving that out, but that is something really important on the policy side to set up programs that are going to create and support the education and the workforce.
Is that with or without city subsidy? Does it matter that just by virtue of the fact of being located in East Palo Alto, they need to do first source hiring?
If you agree to come and do work within our community and build an organization, that is something that you should give back. That's how we feel you should give back to the community and make sure that people who live in the community can continue to live here and earn a livable wage.
That's great. I don't know if that would be preempted by the Commonwealth or not, but it sounds like a great policy for Philadelphia. It's attached to city subsidy right now.
Yeah, exactly. I would thank you, Lisa. That really helps us understand better from the policy perspective, I think. Bob, I would ask you, as we start to think about solutions, what do we need to do to get workforce ready? Because workforce is structural and synergy issues as well. And I would say for me, in my seat, my biggest concern is that if you're looking at the future work, workforce development has traditionally been focused on routine, non-cognitive work. It's the quickest way to put people back to work, frankly. And so as the world has shifted, labor market has shifted under our feet, right? To where we have to now quickly get ready for non-routine cognitive work, right? What do you think workforce development needs to do?
Well, it's a great question. And, there are things that Lisa and Jeff both talked about that I'd like to pick up on, one of them being mentoring and then exposure. Our workforce in Philadelphia runs the gamut from our technicians, which is a phenomenal job that pays well, has great benefits, and a lot of career path opportunity to, software engineers and, a lot of professional skills. So, from the customer facing jobs that Jeff referenced to the jobs that are shaping the future of our industry. And we have to make sure that both young people who are setting out on their academic or job career and people who are being retrained or reconsidering a change know about these jobs, that they have some exposure to see what's out there. As you know, you can't aspire to something that you're not aware of. So mentoring programs are very important. And so in addition to the programs like those that brought Josh to Comcast, we have co-op programs with the colleges and universities, and we have programs with high school students. We're working with the School District of Philadelphia to make sure that kids in their career and technical education programs know about our ComTech programs, which again make up a large part of our workforce and have a terrific career path and the same benefits package as the CEO. And we are doing some innovative partnerships. And I know that you, Sheila, are a huge advocate for partnerships. So we just announced a $100,000 grant to Stepping Stone Scholars for a program in conjunction with the University of Pennsylvania called Invenium. And it provides STEM-based pre-college prep opportunities for K-12 students. We've spent some time talking about adult learners and getting folks who are making career changes ready, but we've got to start early. We have to prepare kids in elementary school and in high school for the path that they're going to take academically in college or in trade school or coming right into the workforce.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And Bob, not to act as your personal PR, but Comcast has also done some investment in the community that inspired some of the digital literacy grant that we just released as well, by bringing up those computing centers that you did as well. So, but thank you for being such a leader in our community, Bob. I appreciate it. And, I would never do this without talking to Tammy, specifically around solutions, because you have some innovative approaches to hiring and talent development. Can you share some nuggets of wisdom with us?
I think, as we begin to look at the skills that are needed in any organization that's is trying to move their needles forward and looking for, what do we really need out of our workers? One of the skill sets that we often leave out of the conversation are those power skills, or, they used to call them the soft skills. Well, the soft skills we know are the necessary skills. We can develop people in those hard skills, being a data science or an AI, but the power skills is the major gap in almost every organization. And so how do we bring back, I call it getting back to the basics. How do we bring back power skills? How do we, when in mentoring programs, that we focus on how to help people develop and strengthen their power skills? When we're looking at, community organizations, how do we bring those power skills into the conversation and making sure that workers who are coming into the workplace who have the hard skills but lack the power skills, how do we get them those power skills? And I think the conversation needs to include what power skills are needed and how we get there. Without them, we're going to continue to see this divide, especially when we start to talk about the most vulnerable within our populations, those underserved populations that, Lisa talks about. Those individuals, and they need to support, they need to understand what those power skills mean and how those power skills actually move you forward. Because it's not the hard skills that got you there, it's the power skills that's getting you there. And we need to make sure people understand that.
Well, I'd love to amplify that. We would love to hire more Philadelphia residents to work for us in Philadelphia. And that is an issue that we are constantly focused on. If you can present with those power skills, then we will train you on how to be a field technician or a customer service representatives or a sales rep. And we always talk with our workforce development partners and basically any program that we support about including that work. So that's, we don't even do a career fair anymore without making sure that at the career fair they have modules where they're teaching folks those skills. We support an organization called Big Picture Alliance in Philadelphia that teaches kids how to make digital movies. And, most of them are not going to become Academy Award winning producers. But what is amazing is those power skills that they learn. And when we talk to those kids, they talked about, I asked the question, tell me what you've learned in this program that had nothing to do with making a movie. And without hesitation, they talked about teamwork and preparation and being reliable for their team, members of their team, their communication skills, their writing skills. And, you just want to declare victory and go home when you hear that from the kids. So whatever the vehicle is, whatever the program is, the bottom line is that they have to be teaching those kinds of skills, because that's what they need to get in the door in Tammy's organization and in ours and everyone else.
Can I jump in for 1 second on this?
We got 1 minute, Jeff, because we got to get to Q&A.
So everything comes back to Leon Sullivan. I know Renee just smiled at that. This was Sullivan's point 70 years ago, that you got to start with what we now call power skills. It's interesting how they've moved away from soft skills to power skills. But I think it's really important that those skills be culturally informed, right? We can't sort of apply one template to this, because there's a lot of cultural difference that we don't want to squash by this. But I think the point that Bob just made, like, I don't think we ask kids to do enough collaborative work, right? We're so focused on standardized test outcomes in public education that we don't allow kids to do enough group work that will naturally let them develop those power skills.
Absolutely. So we have a few minutes left, because I want to give some time for closing remarks from the panel, but there's a couple of questions in the chat specifically, and a couple of them focus on how do we get folks who need to pursue their education ongoing with organizations like Peirce, but there is some fear around getting started, the cost, etc. Like, what do we need to do to help those who have that, I guess, fear of the unknown of what's going on in higher education and how to connect specifically? Any suggestions? So
I'll go back to mentoring and exposure. I think we have to do everything we can to let high school kids or adults who are thinking about retraining know about the opportunities that are out there and what they have to do to get there. And then, of course, make it easy. And Peirce and the Community College of Philadelphia and quite frankly, a lot of higher education organizations are doing that through certificate programs or the opportunity to learn online. But I think there's got to be this carrot at the end of the stick. They have to know what's out there. Why is that journey worth it?
Sheila, one of the things, and I think Lisa said it, is that we need to make these, a stepping stone. We need to make sure that we're breaking down and allow people to be able to chunk and go through the education and the learning that they need, instead of saying that you got to go from 4 years from day one to, I don't know, whatever day fourth year is. That's a little bit frightening. It's daunting. We need to be able to make sure that it's a safe environment. I agree, with Bob, is that we need to make it easy for people to be able to do it. And then we remove that fear. We don't know where the fear is coming from. We don't know whether it is trauma from the past experiences that they had in their secondary education or their primary education that is really putting that barrier up for them to be able to move forward. And so understanding that is really going to help them feel safe and be able to navigate through that.
Absolutely.
Sheila, and I agree with both Tammy and Bob. People have to feel like they can be successful. Let's remove the barriers to education. Let's make it possible. And people need to see themselves in it. There are many adults who are ashamed and don't want to say that they need to go back to school to be upskilled, but let them know it's okay. And oftentimes you can't be what you can't see. So just like your program celebrating those individuals who have gone back to school and and earn their degree. Let's put that out there so that more people can see that we're always learning and it's always possible. So encouraging those individuals to go back to school is going to be important.
Thank you, Lisa. Another question is, and I get this all the time, right? So we use the generic term either soft skills or power skills, right? But I don't think we define succinctly so that people understand what it is that we're talking about. So the question that came up in the Q&A specifically was, what do you mean? Like, what power skills are organizations looking for?
I've also heard them called 21st century skills.
Yes.
I think organizations like Philadelphia Youth Network and the Urban Affairs Coalition, who are working on Philadelphia's fantastic summer jobs program, Work Ready for high school students, are teaching those skills. The combination of prepping those students for how to behave or how to approach their work, and then the actual experience that they have on the job. But it starts with things like being on time and dressing appropriately and looking people in the eye and a firm handshake, and all those basic skills that perhaps our parents taught us or our grandparents taught us that somehow are not a priority right now. But I would also add that digital skills are being added to that, or how to put your phone down or keep it in your pocket while you're at work. Being present, being all in and committed to your job. If you're going to sweep floors as a summer job, be the best floor sweeper, right? So the power skills of 21st century skills are, they used to be called basic skills, but they're as important today as they ever were.
So, Bob, it's interesting, right? Because you gave me a flashback to some work I did decades ago, right? Where we were talking about emotional intelligence, right? It's the same thing. And so we surveyed our managers and asked star performers of all the EQ components, what would be the most impactful? And in other words, if you had to pick one, which one would it be? And they selected self-control. It says you behave the same as you do when I'm there as when I'm not there, right? That your performance is consistent across the board. So it's really interesting because whenever we have this power skills, soft skills conversation, I think some people are wondering, does that mean, do I need to be like you? Right. Which is a very different thing. And I think that conversation we haven't had broadly or deeply enough to understand where we need to go.
Look, and it's a loaded conversation, right? Because I'm just going to put it on the table. What's okay for a little white boy like me to do when I was in school, and I never got below. I had a straight A average all through until I got to MIT and got my ass handed to me. But sorry, you're in these. Like, I was a rowdy kid. I was getting thrown out of class all the time for being too talkative, but it didn't impact my academic future one iota, right? So we need to think about those things. Like I just think but I had teachers who understood that was just what it meant to be an 8-year-old boy with a sharp mind, and they were adept at figuring out how to get me to collaborate with others and work in groups and leverage my skills, right? And I think part of what happens today in elementary school is that it's become too much of a control system and not enough of a liberation system, right? I mean, this is an old conversation in pedagogy, but I just want us to be a little cognizant of the fact that there are really important, often racialized differences about how we talk about these soft skills and power skills that we not to impose too much on other folks.
I think Jeff makes a great point that there are those differences. And I think, when we look at failure in business, right, I think there's a segment of an organization that's allowed to fail, not to achieve. And there's a segment of an organization that that's not an acceptable thing that happens. And so I think, leaders need to create safe spaces where failure is not failure, but it is the first attempt in learning. It is the ability for your team to learn and move forward with that learning. And I think when you start to equalize, that in the environment, that failure is okay. And it is not something that is put upon one group of people and another group can't achieve that. I think when an organization fails fast first, then everyone in the organization moves forward quicker.
Mm-hmm. Tammy, you sound very much like many of the organizations in Silicon Valley. Everybody is moving fast and you have the ability to fail. We don't want to paralyze people into a position where they're not going to act at all. We want people to be successful within their own organization. So you're so right.
I learned a valuable lesson.
Let me just say one thing. I'm getting flagged because it is 10 o'clock. We're a little bit out of time. I knew that we could have this conversation for 3 or 4 hours, but I'm sure no one wants to sit and watch us that long. I need to just thank you all for this just amazing conversation. I hope it has been helpful to our audience in some way. I want to thank Peirce for allowing us to come together to have this important conversation. And I want to thank all of you, right, for really spending the time sharing your insight, right? It's just a powerful thing. So thank you very much. And Hassan, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Well, thank you, Sheila, and thank you, Peirce. I just wanted to share a lesson that I learned about mentoring from a young man who was a speaker at a Philadelphia Youth Network event. And he said that there were so many people who helped him on his path that they didn't even know that they were mentoring him. And a lot of times people get scared and think mentoring is a formal program, a long-term commitment, like Big Brothers Big Sisters, which is amazing. But he said, I was interning at a bank, and there was a guy who I didn't know, always stopped to say hello in the morning. And, over time, I overcame my shyness and started to talk to him. And one day he said, that necktie isn't really tied right. Can I help you? And he taught him how to tie his necktie. And it's little gestures like that every adult can share with a young person or someone who is making a change in their life to help them in some small way to get them on the right track. It doesn't have to be a long time commitment or a formal initiative.
Thank you, Bob. Couldn't have said it better myself. Hassan, we're going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you all for joining us this morning. It has been an honor to have you attend our 2021 Executive Leadership Breakfast. Special thanks go out to all of our sponsors, our panelists, our panel moderator, and our honorary chairs. If you have any questions about Peirce College, Career Bridge, or workforce innovation at Peirce, please contact me directly at upskill@peirce.edu. Have a wonderful day.